Welcome to wasmCloud Wednesday for September the 8th. We're going to start with a quick review on the new CI pipeline, and then a review on wasmCloud.50 status 5.0, and then we're going to go into some discussion around an operator. Brooks, turn it over to you.
Sounds great. Let me share real quick. All right. Hopefully, should be looking at a bunch of CI looking stuff, like GitHub action. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, cool. So over the past maybe week and a half, I've been kind of overhauling our GitHub actions. All of our CI/CD is hosted in GitHub actions. For what it's worth. And I just wanted to show off some of the new architecture, like some of the new things that I added. Overall, it made our CI a lot simpler, and there's very little that you have to change going from repository to repository to like publish a crate or even to publish like a provider archive or an actor. So I'll just show off a couple of things. A lot of the actions are largely, kind of cut and paste moving between repositories. And I'll also talk about how we're like reducing that cut and paste too. So to start, this is the control interface GitHub action. It's in the control interface repository, and it's essentially what publishes this. This is a Rust crate. It's what publishes this to crates.io. And there's two parts of this. There's the jobs that we run when you PR or on any new commit to main, and then there's the actions that you run when you push a tag, and those are to create a release and then release to crates.io. So the only thing that runs when you create a PR, if you push a commit to main, which we have branch protection on, so everything happens through PRs anyways. So if you PR into main, then it runs this Rust check action. It runs on Ubuntu. All it does is it checks out the repository and then runs the wasmCloud comment action for Rust check. So this is the first thing that we kind of overhauled for our CI. Is we had this like cut and paste Rust check, which was just like a couple steps to like run cargo build, cargo test, Clippy, formatting, things like that. And I've abstracted all of those into this common actions repository. This is public. You all are welcome to like reuse any of them. I haven't actually versioned it. I'll probably publish a version 1 once I've done like, running through all of the different repositories, make sure I don't have to change anything. But all of these actions are essentially reused throughout our GitHub org. And I wrote some documentation here, but if you look at like the Rust check action, that takes just a single input where the crate is located in the repository, and then it will check your formatting for you, run cargo build, run Clippy, and run cargo tests, kind of just what I talked about before. But instead of copying and pasting this entire thing everywhere in our GitHub org, we just say that we use this action. And so that way in the future, if we wanted to change anything about this specific action, we can change it here and it'll change it throughout our whole org. And as soon as we're not, like right now I'm doing it just off of the main branch, we can also do that off of like a version tag, so we don't actually accidentally, create incompatibilities. So the rest of this only runs when you push a tag. And this is how we actually create a release. What it does is as soon as the cargo build, cargo test passes, it'll create a release in GitHub so that you can actually go and navigate to that release with any notes that we publish. And then it'll run the common action for releasing to crates.io. And if we look at that one real quick, that one takes like your crates publish token that you can use to authenticate, and then logs in for you and then publishes your crate. So across the repository that we have here now, there's common things that we're just copy pasting across like multiple GitHub actions. And this really helps with not repeating ourselves in a lot of different places. Somewhere else that this really helps, still in other GitHub actions, but for like publishing a capability provider. Here, let me go into my PR actually. That's where the most recent stuff is. So for publishing a provider archive, we can reuse a lot of these common actions, like we run nats and then run our integration tests, for example, because we need nats for the provider archives. And then we can greatly simplify the process to like build a provider archive by just a one-liner to install wash, or a one-liner to install the cross tool that we use to like cross compile for different architectures. Things like that makes it so much easier. And for these actions where we actually have these artifacts, whether it's like a provider archive or eventually for the OTP release where we're going to have the gzipped tarballs for your architecture and your operating system, what we do is we, oh, sorry, I'm losing my stuff. We attach that to the GitHub release. So if I look at this is just like a test release to show you what this looks like. But when we release the wasmCloud HTTP server provider, that's going to go into our Azure Container Registry, but it's also going to be present here on the GitHub release. And so that gives another option if you want to, I'm not exactly sure the exact scenario where you like wouldn't have wash or wouldn't want to download it from the Azure Container Registry, but it's also available here, really easy to grab. And this will kind of facilitate how we're going to distribute the OTP release as well. So I think that's most of what I wanted to talk about in terms of GitHub actions. Our OTP actions are probably some of the most complex just because there's lots of steps for Elixir for building, and the cargo clippy equivalent like Credo or Credo, I don't know, and Dialyzer for Elixir. So I think there's some opportunities to move these into the common action repository. And largely across the GitHub org, we have CI with GitHub actions in place to like publish our crates and publish our artifacts. So it's been a lot of work up front to get this all working well, but now, once it's tried and true and we release using automation, we can just build off of that forever. Anybody have any questions or want me to go talk about any specific step? Hopefully I didn't gloss over any cool things about the common actions or anything, but I'm pretty proud of how this turned out.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Yeah, I didn't know that the common actions could be so simple. I thought that I think I wrote or debugged at least an action that was written in TypeScript. But I didn't know that you could just do them so easily in YAML. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, great tour, Brooks. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. Real quick, David, I know you have a bunch of stuff that you want to talk about today. Steve, you mind giving us a quick update on the 0.5 release of wasmCloud?
Yes, sure. And just wanted to say, I think it's really awesome, the automation that Brooks is doing. We have over 30, probably closer to 40 Rust crates. And so any code savings we can do is a big win. Any avoiding duplication is a big win. So I'm going to share screen with the ZenHub board. Let's see. There we go. So this is a release report. All right, you're seeing my browser that says wasmCloud-0.50, right?
Yep. Looks
okay, this is a release report that shows a sort of a burn up chart. And we're still, as an organization, getting used to these things. There are some stories that had a large number of points that we did in the end, so that the slope of our velocity is increased. But we're tracking this towards completion. We're primarily working on documentation and examples. Here's stuff we're working on now. Includes the the GitHub actions that Brooks working on, tutorials and demos. And so we're getting closer and closer. I put a screenshot of this graph in the Slack chat yesterday. If people are really interested, I could do that more often. Just let me know, send a message in Slack. I could show you some of the documentation that's in a PR. How do you move this screen share demo so you can access your browser tabs?
Zoom is blocking you from.
Yeah, Zoom is
just
blocking
doing
me. Well, let's see here. So here's one example of the run. We start an actor. So this is what's going to show up on wasmCloud.dev, walking through how do you set up link definitions, how do you get started. We have walk you through the code generator. There's also walk you through the update process. So if you update your code, then you need to push the result and update and test it. So all of that's in there as well. So this is something that's moving along, should be in pretty good shape in the next couple days. Should be ready to publish. So that's my update. Any
That's
questions?
Awesome. It's awesome, Steve. And I did try to print this off as like a PDF and export it, but it all like prints out goofy stuff. So we still, I think, have some more work to do on being more transparent on this, or find a system that lets us accomplish the organization of releases across a wide variety of repositories, like what we're doing now. So we're still maybe on the hunt for that. And screenshot to print. Yeah, we'll see how we can get that out a little further here. And I think there's also actually on the Red Badger side, now that you guys are all added to the repo on the next topic here. So I think you guys actually would be able to see this now. Is that right, Steve? Like if you're in the org, it shows up for you?
Yes, if they are members of the wasmCloud org on GitHub, you can view ZenHub with a ZenHub free account.
Okay. Well, we'll see if we can maybe just circulate that link a little bit and see if it works for you as we move in. David, I know oh, sorry.
Can I follow up on Liam's point? More specifically, we do want to be transparent about this, and I don't get too many responses to the weekly updates. So if you feel like you have a way to describe the information that you'd like, or a form that would be helpful for you to follow along, please let me know, because I don't want to keep doing something that's not useful. I want to make it really useful and informative. So please send feedback. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Steve. Awesome work. I really appreciate all the facilitation you're doing and organization there. I think it's super helpful. David, I think we're back to the discussion you guys were having when we kicked off here. I don't know, does it make sense for you or Kevin maybe to do a quick high-level overview for what the discussion was about, and then you guys can dive right back into it?
I can. So for people who don't know, so the dream goal, I guess, is for you to say keep control apply. You put, this is my dream goal. It might not align with anyone else's. You put your application, like a single resource that describes your application, that something like Kuvela can read, and also some theoretical wasmCloud operator can read, and then Kubevela will set up like pods, like if you need to actually do the top level like wasmCloud pods and like scale the wasmCloud pods horizontally, then you could get Kubevela to do that, maybe. And then question mark, question mark, question mark, and then profit. No, sorry. So and then so we feed like the intention to the license controller, this theoretical license controller, which sits like talking over NATs with like a recording of what the intention is, and also the ability to query the hosts for what reality is. And the intention, like the lattice controller's job is to make reality like reflect the intentions that you have. And then I'm not actually sure, like, I'm not actually sure what this path looks like. But then I've never actually written a Kubernetes operator. So I'm like the least qualified person to talk about this, which is why I'm picking Janitha's brain and desperately trying to pick Janitha's brain. I think Stu has written one.
Yeah,
well.
I've got some ideas about what that back path looks like. I guess in situations where you're running wasmCloud on top of Kubernetes or on top of multiple Kubernetes clusters, I think it's quite a nice idea to visualize like an Argo CD browser UI with the tree of all the Kubernetes resources and the status of those, and you know, an operator would pick one of those up and potentially picks up a parent resource, creates child resources, etc., which either do something or don't do something. And those child resources are often just used to store the status of those resources, whether they're real or not, because at the end of the day, they're just records in etcd, right? I mean, it's just a custom resource. So think about the way Cert Manager works. Cert Manager creates a custom resource for an ordering a certificate, for the challenge, for the actual certificate itself, and you can kubectl describe any of those resources and see whether, you know, where the certificate is in its issuing, you know, workflow. So I don't think it's uncommon for an operator to create child custom resources in Kubernetes, regardless of whether they refer to any physical thing or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so, well, Kubevela is an operator for Kubernetes that works with OAM, and I thought I'd look into it more because, you know, I don't particularly think we should necessarily spend a lot of effort writing an operator if there's one already exists that works with the file type that we're, you know, with the CRD that we're going to use. And I also think there's some benefit in having an OAM custom resource, application resource that contains potentially a mix of actors and capability providers for wasmCloud and Kubernetes pods or deployments or whatever that, or serve microservices that, you know, talk to each other, like a, I don't know, a Redis database or Ingress gateway or whatever it is. So I think something quite nice about having an OAM resource that contains the whole description of your application, regardless of whether it's, you know, bits, the actors and the capability providers are running in wasmCloud, everything else running in Kubernetes. And so if we follow that model further, then the operator would also create custom resources for actors and capability providers that were just dummy placeholders, effectively, for the real things running in wasmCloud. And then they become a receptacle for status information coming back from wasmCloud. So for instance, if you were looking at the whole application as a tree in an Argo CD web browser, you would see the actors and capability providers named and containing information which you can use, including the status, like whether they're healthy or not, and they'd be linked back to their parent, which would be the OAM application resource. So that could work quite nicely. So you'd almost potentially have Kubevela at the front doing the operator bit, producing, and I've already got this working as a sort of like a stunt hack. Creating actor and capability provider resources, just dummy ones, doesn't do anything else, just creates those resources. And then kubevela also has this new functionality called workflows, which you can use to sort of orchestrate how those resources are actually created. Maybe there's an order to them. Maybe you want to do something at the end or at the beginning, or, you know, like a bit like Helm hooks, I guess, but on steroids. And it looks really cool. So you can use the Q templating language to write these workflows, and they can call out to do things. And so I actually got a kubevela watching an application resource, creating actors and capability custom resources. And then once it had done that, it then posted the parent OAM application resource to an HTTP endpoint on my MacBook, which I just used to demonstrate the principle, basically. So I guess what I'm saying is kubevela could create the resources that just act as receptacles for status. And once it's done those, on every change to the OAM, it would basically make sure that everything was in sync and post it somewhere. And that could be pushing it to an next topic. So we could actually have, with kubevela, we could have that Kubernetes operator without doing very much at all. But it's just an idea.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that works out, because when, at least from my poking around with kubevela, it's mostly like a templating engine where, you know, you define what you want in terms of OAM primitives, and then, you know, based on the type of thing that you've got loaded in kubevela, it's then able to produce text files, YAML files, and things like that based on parsing through that OAM file. And so it may be too generic in some sense, in that the Lattice controller is designed to operate on an entire OAM app spec model. And so whether or not kubevela is involved, the Lattice controller doesn't really care. All it's really using is OAM. And so, you know, people with more experience can certainly decide, but I wonder if kubevela might actually be adding too much overhead to the process, when a thinner controller might be the way to go. Because if you're, it depends on the granularity of the CRDs that you're monitoring, right? You could create a CRD for every actor and another CRD for every capability provider, or you could create a single CRD for the Lattice controller's entire OAM model, and then just keep track of the status of the entire deployment as reported by the Lattice controller. Because the plan there is that, in addition to the Lattice controller managing the deployment on the Lattice, it's also going to expose query functions that you can use to query the status of the deployment, and potentially do things like get, you know, an event stream, so that you can hook into things like the change event on a CRD in Kubernetes.
I like that. I like that idea even more, actually, because you know, wasmCloud has the washboard and it, you know, its own set of tools for reporting all the status of everything, and you really don't want to necessarily replicate that in Kubernetes. So I like the idea of having a less granular model. So in other words,
I worry that
you wouldn't model the wasmCloud environment in Kubernetes at all. Yeah,
right. Yes, that was the thing. Is I worried that attempting to create CRDs for that have parity with low-level wasmCloud primitives might actually be adding more work than you need.
Yeah,
because the Lattice controller is already keeping track of all the low-level primitives and bubbling up high-level events. So it might be worth it to just create, you know, a CRD that represents a single wasmCloud deployment. And, you know, then all you have to do is ask the Lattice controller, hey, what's the status of deployment with this name? And now your operator is complete.
Yeah, I like that. Prefer that.
Yeah, because for the status, you can have and put whatever you actually want in there because it's actually its own structure, as I'm sure Stuart and everybody else is aware of. And yeah, if you just have one, and I guess so, it sounds really like the intent here is the operator is just a way to report status back, so you can view it through kubectl or whatever else actually interfaces with kubectl or that API. Otherwise, it's actually it's basically a dumb listener, right? You don't want any actions to go through.
Right. I mean, I think the only thing you'd want to do is kubectl apply, which would then, you know, downstream produce the Lattice controller's OAM file and send that to the Lattice controller. And then you theoretically have a one-to-one correlation between the CRD and the Lattice controller's managed deployment.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. But
I suppose it
so
would also be responsible for stripping out anything that the Lattice controller doesn't understand? Or is it the Lattice controller's responsibility to do that?
Well, Lattice controller is essentially going to have an OAM. It is aware of its specific OAM, so it knows that what a Lattice controller's app spec looks like, and it knows which traits it supports on the types of components that it has. So if you try and send it components that it doesn't understand, it will likely reject the OAM file.
Right. Yeah. So in a model where you wanted to describe your entire app as a single OAM file in the theoretical future, I guess you would.
Yeah. So one of the components of your larger app would be the wasmCloud OAM model.
Right. Okay. You wouldn't try and interleave it with like a kubevela OAM. You'd have a kubevela OAM for like the infrastructure app, if you want to call it like the framework, and then a separate one on the side for the wasmCloud app. Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
It's a little bit tricky though, because OAM has specific groups and kinds, right? API version groups and kinds.
Yeah, and the one for the wasmCloud app spec, the group on it is different. So you can use that to differentiate between like say a super or a higher level app spec, and then within that you could have as one of those components maybe a wasmCloud app spec.
Yeah,
I don't know if the structure supports that kind of nesting, but it might work.
But either way, kubevela would ignore the ones that didn't have the same API version, etc. So they could be completely independent rather than nested. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you'd want to set the Kubernetes controller up so that it works just on standard operator primitives and wouldn't require interop with kubevela.
Yeah.
Because if kubevela is doing its job, then it can pretend to it's essentially just a source of additional text files, right? So it can shove YAML files or whatever kind of files you want into any target you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, I mean, there is a demo coming up on Friday, or well, actually, sorry, you guys have to do your recordings, but for the Lattice controller, it is theoretical at this point. do we have an API spec for it at this point in time where we can design, I suppose, the CRDs?
The API for the Lattice controller is under construction.
Okay.
There is a spec for the OAM file or the OAM object that it accepts for putting a new managed wasmCloud deployment. So that part is at least done. So creating a new deployment should be fairly straightforward. The other stuff like querying the status and things like that, those data structures we'll have to discover as stuff gets built. But I'll post straight to the wasmCloud Slack channel a copy of the latest OAM file or a sample OAM file so you can see what it looks like.
That's great.
It's a really robust discussion. Kevin, I know if you're sharing those, do we need to, and I think I really appreciate we've actually learned a lot by trying some quick POCs around this. Does it make sense for us to put our collective heads together and capture this as an RFC or an RFP maybe?
The Lattice controller started out as an RFC. It's already there.
Absolutely. But to connect the rest of the stack up here, I think that there was some pretty significant alignment. Do we do a operator RFC so that we get a line there and then we can maybe plan, execution?
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
I'm not sure that I could capture the RFC here. Did somebody feel like they were following along, could get this sketched out in a way that into a ticket up on GitHub so we can get this RFC crafted? Did anybody want to take the lead on that?
We can. Volunteering you, David.
You're looking at me. Okay. Well, if it's happening next week.
Okay. Yeah, I think, this is important, not urgent. Thank you, David. I really appreciate that. That'd be awesome.
I'm quite happy to help with it as well, David. Just feel free to ping me on Pacific time, US, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll work out so in terms, I feel like we've got in our heads a reasonable idea of what the minimal operator actually looks like in terms of its traffic flow in both directions. That sounds good. And you've got a skeleton Go implementation of a generic operator, and that probably will fit reasonably well into the model. And I guess the NATS communication, Go has reasonably good NATS libraries because NATS is written in Go.
Yeah, Go has the first class. They get all the goodies before everybody else does for NATS.
So if we're jumping onto implementation, not just specification, an implementation that's based off that Go based skeleton, it probably is a reasonable start. So yeah. Okay. Right. We'll write some things up. But yeah, let's get demo working for KubeCon this week, and I'll write up for next week. Unless someone else jumps in and starts a PR, we can make a PR for the RFC and have multiple people make sub PRs to modify it if you want. But yeah, okay. Yeah, if no one else does it, I'll do it next week.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, thank you everyone for that good discussion. So I know not everybody feels positively about Kubernetes, so I just wanted to maybe socialize my perspective on it and see if there was some alignment. I have really advocated for us investing here and building tooling and connecting to where people are today, because I want to be able to take them to a different place. And if you, in big enterprises, my perspective is that it takes so long for them to build up the infrastructure and get all their boxes checked and align with policy and procedure and have security and scanning and governance and legal and compliance and all the other orgs there, that we can dramatically accelerate the adoption of wasmCloud by investing a little bit of time now in order to be compatible with their community and ecosystem. And obviously my hope would be is that as we mature our ecosystem and other options emerge or other design patterns and other architecture evolves, that we could bridge them out there. Does anybody have a different perspective that they want to share or feel strongly against that or for that?
I think that just generally goes along with the strategy that we've always had, which is to be compatible with all of the other things, but not
Dependent upon. Yeah.
Not dependent upon, right? And so that's essentially the reason for the lattice controller architecture that we're heading for, which is it'll make it very easy to build a Kubernetes controller or Kubernetes operator, but that doesn't preclude any other framework from sitting on top of the lattice controller as well.
Right. And that was the, sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, you can deploy the wasmCloud host in Kubernetes pods just as easily as you can on bare metal and on Raspberry Pis and so on. So we continue to have, as we add features, our roadmap essentially requires that we maintain a firm stance that our stuff is compatible with but not dependent upon.
Yeah, I mean, this is the world kind of changes as we kind of think about these epics of computing here with WebAssembly, because the fundamental nature of the unit of compute is kind of changing here, right? We're not moving from a abstraction of a virtual machine, an abstraction of a Linux environment. We're back to an abstraction of a CPU. It's almost like recursive when you think about it that way, except there's no operating system in here. We've just got our wasmCloud shim that pulls us up into the future. In the future, we will have WASI sitting on top of this stuff to give us some operating system type primitives. But the way that we've always built wasmCloud is so that it's completely compatible with, and those features would just flow right into either a capability provider or just naturally into the project there. But that's where I've done this. I had a couple of people ask me to do a version of this, but to put the orchestrator technologies in here. So to put a cloud in the stack, to put a Kubernetes in the stack here. So I may take another pass at these if folks have thoughts on trying to figure out how we can surface those. But again, this is the world that I feel like we're really building for, with a huge emphasis down at this end where we run everywhere WebAssembly does, and that includes native silicon without Kubernetes. Maybe I should illustrate that on here, pull Kubernetes back a bit, on Kubernetes, directly in the web browser or directly on the devices themselves, with the sort of cross connections there. Strategically, does everybody feel aligned that this is the world that we need to build for?
I can imagine lots of hybrid applications running in the cloud where parts of it are implemented in wasmCloud, but the remainder is still in Kubernetes or something, and you just want to gradually move it over.
Yep. I mean, the investment that the years it takes for an enterprise to support this, which is what they've spent the last 7 years building, is not easily turned over. It involves, in large, highly regulated orgs, policies and procedures going to the board of directors and being approved, and then coming back down, at least the policies and then the procedures, like the actual, how do we do this, getting implemented here. So it's going to take the enterprise a while to catch up with, in a world where, you execute in other people's environments. How do you think about writing policy and procedure for that? And they're already doing it now with stuff like web browsers, but it just becomes more real to them when they're thinking about executing on like an Alexa or a refrigerator, or something down at this end where we may not have Kubernetes. There's some lower bound where we stop Kubernetes or we don't run this in the browser. So I think it's just really helpful for us all to kind of understand that why we're doing these investments in being compatible with where the enterprise is today, so that we all make sense strategically there. Open floor, any other comments on that before we just move on to another topic? All right, super. Quick community updates. We've got the wasmCloud 5.0 release party being planned right now. So we'll try to do an evening with some bourbon and a 1-hour demo, sponsored by Cosmonic. We have a WASM Day coming up on October 12th. Schedule has been published. It's about to be rearranged. We've done a draft of that. We'll publish that next week, where we call out who's remote and virtual, and then who is in theory in person right now. I still am skeptical personally that that's going to happen, but I do plan on being there and out at the booth. And then, of course, we've got KubeCon EU. There was another community event that was announced on September the 22nd, WASM 3, something or other. I'll link it in the notes. It's a walkthrough, and make sure we put it on Slack in case anybody wants to attend. There will be a discount coupon put in this week for anyone that still needs to register for KubeCon or WASM Day. I will likely have some additional free passes this year. If you're waiting to the last minute, you can ask me for those if I have any left. But we're going to put a 20% discount code in to the WASM Weekly newsletter this week, and I'll drop it into our Slack as well in case anybody wants to grab it. Any other community news or activity? Folks have anything going on they'd want to highlight? All right. Open floor. Any RFCs to circulate, or I think we're all hustling on our KubeCon deliverables and the 5.0 release. Anything else? All right. Well, incredible meeting today, everybody. Thank you so much. I'll go and stop recording, and we can hang out as usual. Cheers.